A security guard humiliated a teenage boy in front of a crowd, accusing him of theft he didn't commit. The boy's father, a senator, stepped forward, exposing this act as more than a misunderstanding. It was a glimpse into a deeper injustice. What happened next would shock even the most hardened. But let's start at the beginning. The Watson's department store buzzed with life on a bustling Saturday afternoon. Shoppers navigated the polished aisles, their conversations blending with the rhythmic hum of overhead speakers playing cheerful background music. Bright fluorescent lights illuminated the space, casting a clean, crisp glow over the neatly organized shelves brimming with electronics, home goods, and trendy apparel. In the electronics aisle, 14-year-old Jamal Carter stood at the center of his own small world. A black teenager with deep brown eyes and neatly cropped black hair. He wore a simple navy hoodie, loose-fitting jeans, and slightly scuffed white sneakers. His youthful face was a mixture of excitement and concentration as he held a boxed gaming headset, his fingers carefully turning it over to inspect the features. Months of saving his allowance had led to this moment, and his mind was already envisioning the thrill of finally owning the coveted headset. Unbeknownst to Jamal, Hank Lawson, a burly, pale-skinned security guard in his late 40s, had been observing him with sharp suspicion. Known among staff for his quick temper and frequent targeting of young black shoppers, Hank leaned casually against a nearby shelf, his closely shaven head and thick mustache only adding to his intimidating demeanor. Dressed in a standard-issue gray security uniform, his hand hovered near the walkie-talkie clipped to his belt as his sharp eyes followed Jamal's every move. "Hey, kid!" Hank's voice barked suddenly, shattering Jamal's focus. The teenager flinched, his wide brown eyes snapping up in confusion. "What are you hiding in your pocket?" Startled and bewildered, Jamal stammered, "I'm not hiding anything, sir. I was just looking at—" "Don't give me that!" Hank interrupted, advancing with an air of authority. The scene drew the attention of nearby shoppers, who paused to watch as tension mounted. Hank grabbed Jamal's wrist roughly. "Empty your pockets, now." Panicked, Jamal protested. "I didn't take anything. You can check." But his words fell on deaf ears. Hank reached into Jamal's hoodie pocket, extracting only a folded receipt and a keychain. Gasps rippled through the small crowd. Jamal's face turned a deep shade of red, a mix of humiliation and anger swelling within him. "See? Nothing." Jamal's voice trembled, his indignation evident. "Yeah, well," Hank sneered dismissively. "Kids like you are always up to something." Before Jamal could defend himself further, a commanding voice cut through the growing tension. "What's going on here?" The onlookers turned as a tall, impeccably dressed black man in his mid-40s strode forward with an air of authority. His tailored suit and piercing gaze silenced the murmurs. It was Senator Malcolm Carter, Jamal's father. The electronics aisle of Watson's department store had grown tense and silent, the earlier buzz of shoppers now replaced with an air of uncomfortable anticipation. Senator Malcolm Carter, a tall black man in his mid-40s, exuded authority and anger as his piercing gaze bore into the burly, pale-skinned security guard, Hank Lawson. Dressed in a tailored charcoal gray suit with a crisp white shirt and a silk tie, Carter's presence was commanding, his deep brown skin glowing under the harsh fluorescent lights. His dark eyes burned with a mix of fury and restraint. "Why are you manhandling my son?" Carter demanded, his voice sharp and unwavering. Hank, visibly taken aback, faltered. His pale skin seemed even paler under the scrutiny of Carter and the watchful eyes of the surrounding crowd. His usual bravado cracked as he stammered, I caught him acting suspiciously. I was just doing my job." His thick mustache twitched nervously, and his gray uniform appeared disheveled as sweat began to bead on his bald head. "Suspiciously?" Carter repeated, his tone icy. He stepped forward, his polished black shoes clicking sharply against the tiled floor. "Did you see him steal anything?" "Well, no, but—" Hank began. "Then why?" Carter interrupted, his voice rising. "Did you accuse him? Why did you humiliate him in front of these people?" The weight of his words hung in the air, silencing even the quiet murmurs of the onlookers. Hank's confidence crumbled further. "I was just trying to keep the store safe." "Safe from what?" Carter snapped, his tone dripping with contempt. "A boy shopping with his own hard-earned money?" The senator turned to his son, Jamal, who stood close by, clutching the boxed headset in trembling hands. The 14-year-old black teenager, dressed in a rumpled navy hoodie and jeans, nodded silently, his deep brown eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I just wanted to buy the headset, Dad," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Carter placed a protective arm around Jamal's shoulders, his expression softening briefly before turning back to Hank. "You owe my son an apology." Hank's jaw tightened and his face hardened. "I don't owe anyone anything. I was doing my job." Carter straightened, his calm exterior barely concealing the controlled anger underneath. "You were profiling, and you humiliated a child. I'll make sure everyone hears about this." He pulled out his phone and began taking photos of Hank, the store's logo, and the gathered crowd. The realization of the fallout hit Hank like a wave. His face paled, and his shoulders slumped as he stood frozen, the weight of his actions now unavoidable. By the next morning, the story had spread like wildfire. Clips of the incident, captured by onlookers, circulated on social media. The hashtags "Justice for Jamal" and #Watson's profiling trended nationwide. Public outrage exploded as people decried the store's handling of the situation. Corporate Watsons released a hurried statement apologizing for the misunderstanding and promising an investigation. But the damage was done. Activists organized protests outside the store, demanding accountability. Meanwhile, Senator Carter appeared on news outlets, speaking passionately about the incident. "This isn't just about my son," he told reporters. "It's about every black child who's been judged unfairly because of the color of their skin. This stops now." Hank, now suspended pending investigation, faced scrutiny from all sides. Old stories about his history of targeting black shoppers surfaced, painting a damning picture. He avoided the media, holed up in his small apartment, grappling with a rare pang of guilt. 2 weeks later, Watsons hosted a press conference. The CEO personally apologized to Jamal and the Carter family, announcing mandatory bias training for all employees and Hank's termination. Senator Carter used the opportunity to push for broader reforms, advocating for systemic changes in corporate practices. Despite the public apology, Jamal struggled to move past the humiliation. One evening, as he sat with his father on their porch, he voiced his fears. "What if people always see me like that, Dad? As a suspect?" Senator Carter placed a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "Jamal, you are so much more than their stereotypes. You are intelligent, kind, and capable. Don't let their ignorance define you." Meanwhile, Hank, now unemployed, attended his first community discussion on racial bias. For the first time, he listened, truly listened, to the stories of those he had wronged. It was a small step, but it planted a seed of change. Jamal's story became a rallying cry, inspiring countless others to speak out against racial profiling. And while the scars of that day remained, they also fueled his determination. Months later, As Jamal aced his exams and joined a youth leadership program, he carried his father's words with him. They may see you as a suspect, but I see you as a leader.